This podcast is brought to you by the Albany Public Library main branch and the generosity of listeners like you. What is a podcast? God, Daddy, these people talk as much as you do. Razib Khan's Unsupervised Learning.
Thanks for listening to the ungated version of the Unsupervised Learning podcast. If you want to read some essays on some of these topics, please check out razib.substack.com. Again, that's razib.substack.com. Thank you.
Hey everybody, this is Razib with the Unsupervised Learning podcast. And today I am here with Rachel Haywire, who is, so she has a Substack called Cultural Futurist and an Instagram, Cultural Futurist, and she's also on, I'm just going to say X now. It's been long enough. So you can find her in various places. And I've actually known of, this is what I'm going to say, I don't know Rachel very well personally. We've engaged with each other online now and then. But it's one of those things where sometimes you see someone on the internet adjacent to you or around you for years and years and years. Now, often those people just disappear. Rachel never disappeared. So I figured at this point, we should just have a conversation because she's definitely here to stay. And, she has some, I was going to say heterodox, but that's kind of like a vanilla word. You're a transhumanist. Your Substack's called Cultural Futurist. You're interested in art, and some of the stuff online. By the way, what I'll do is the word edgy came up, but I think that's a little overused. And also, you've been. I first encountered you, I think, around 2010. So it's not like you're one of the late teen anons, that kind of made a splash or anything like that. It's kind of a different arc. So can you talk a little bit about where you're at, what you're doing, and then we can get into your philosophy and the art and the culture and everything like that, because I know you have some strong opinions on that.
Sure. Yeah, so I don't consider myself a transhumanist anymore because people confuse that with transsexual. And I don't want to be confused for transsexual just because I'm a woman with high agency. So I just go by futurist instead of transhumanist. I run the Cultural Futurist Substack. We host salons. We host book clubs. We're currently doing a Nietzschean book club. And the salons feature musicians that do live performances, speakers that talk about their philosophies and their ideas. We recently had Antonelli Carlin give a talk about accelerationism. We had my friend Zenkol do kind of like a dark gothic poetic performance art piece. So I keep it eclectic and I like to mix things up. I consider myself a social alchemist.
Okay. So, what does a social? I know what alchemy is, and there's the term social activist. So let's talk about what a social alchemist is.
So I'm the girl who brings together people from the underground art and music scenes who are sick of the common narrative with people in the tech industry that are also sick of the monolithic tech culture. And I kind of put everything into a blender. So you've got, you use the word heterodox. I don't know if that's the right word. I don't want to use the word dissident. Every word has a lot of baggage now. So let's just go with renegade. I bring together renegade philosophers, artists, and musicians with renegade founders and philosophers and thinkers. And I throw events and salons for everybody to converge, meet, share ideas, network, and create new hybridizations of culture.
Yeah, and so my understanding is, you have been doing something like this for a while now. And, there is a whole scene, there's a whole scene in New York City also of, I'll use the word dissident. I don't know what other word, but you're right. Every word has been overdone, so it's got baggage. But dissident, kind of against the woke cultural hegemony that kind of emerged in the teens.
Yep.
But you predated that, and I'm just kind of curious, your observation of the changes that you've seen. Let's say start around 2010 onward.
Okay, so in 2010, I was working as an event producer for the Singularity Institute, which later became MIRI, the Machine Institute of Research Intelligence, which is Eliezer's project. And they were very focused on AI safety. There were people that were talking about this AI apocalypse that was going to be happening. Um, I never drank the Kool-Aid. I thought that AI was cool and I wanted to blend it with art. And this was back in 2010, but for Midjourney, people were just starting to talk about crypto. I was going to parties in the East Bay where people were just giving each other Bitcoin. And they were saying like, hey, we've created a new currency. We're fighting against the fiat. We wanted an alternative economy. People were just starting to talk about network states. Ephemeral was happening in the Bay Area. People like Vitalik were just showing up at these parties and talking about their ideas. And it was a really cool time. There was a lot of innovation. There were a lot of renegade, dissident, heterodox founders and philosophers just hanging out, talking, and building.
Yeah, I was, I lived in Berkeley until 2011, and I knew Eliezer and people at MIRI, Singularity Institute, whatever. So, I saw. Actually, I was hanging out with Patry yesterday, Patry Friedman. So,
Tell him I said hi.
We were actually talking about ephemeral, and he was just talking about the logistics and everything. Actually, can you just really quickly? You mentioned ephemeral. Just tell people what ephemeral is, just so that it doesn't sound like we're using insider words.
Ephemeral. I mean, the easiest way to explain it would be Burning Man on a boat and a really big boat. So, Burning Man on the water. It's essentially founders in the Bay Area who come out into the Sacramento Delta to have a party. You can even have your own theme boat, like instead of a theme camp, you can have a theme boat. And it's a lot of fun. I remember going out there and meeting with all the people who are pretty big now. All of the early pioneers that were going to ephemeral back in the day are now making massive waves. So we've seen this huge change in the culture. And it's incredible to witness how much has developed. The whole heterodox thing, it wasn't really relevant during the time of ephemeral. We were all just weird, radical, centrist, libertarian types. I mean, yeah, there were some neo-reactionaries, but we didn't even call it that. We were just kind of out of the box thinkers who wanted to do cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think people have to remember that, at this time, people were still kind of a hangover over George W. Bush, the neocon era, all of the different categories and factions that we take for granted today were very, very much in, embryo, they were very embryonic stage. And so people were interacting with each other that, say, today would be totally different factions. And, they had connections with each other, and people today might be a little surprised. But, back then, there were no rules in a way. Cancel culture didn't really exist. Facebook and Twitter and social media didn't have the power that it has, or I would say it had more, let's say peaking around 2020, And so it was a period of, it allowed for some level of experimentation, right?
Yeah, people with all different types of views were just hanging out together. There weren't a bunch of people that were getting canceled for their tweets. Back during the old days, we were all on Facebook, which nobody uses now, and everybody just knew each other because they were making cool things. And that was it. There were no political divisions. There were no culture war teams. I guess we were all the Grey Tribe, that the article about the Grey Tribe hadn't been written yet. You can tolerate anything but the out group, as Scott Alexander wrote. But at the time, we were all the in group because there weren't that many of us.
Yeah. I mean, even I was thinking today, I was thinking today about effective altruism. Before it was called effective altruism, it did exist in a form. It's basically a form of utilitarianism. And now that it's become really big, and after FTX put so much money into it, there's a whole new like social category of person that's involved in effective altruism that really wasn't there 15 years ago. And so it's been a sociological change in the movement. And I don't want to go on a tangent on that, but it was just something I was thinking about, where you have this movement with these ideological propositions supposedly, but actually what the movement is strongly affected by the demographics of who's in the movement. So if it's Bay Area tech nerds in 2010 versus a much more wide range of people with a lot of like women and like liberal social activists coming in. It's changed a lot. I think EA, in terms of what it's been. So you were talking about AI, and you were never scared of AI. So that must have put you, from what I remember, that would put you in like a pretty minoritarian position in that circle around Eliezer at that period.
Yeah, I never believed that AI was going to take over the world and kill us. I understood the arguments for why he believed it, but it just seemed like science fiction to me. I think that every new technology that develops is going to create a lot of fear in a lot of people's minds. People are inclined to be afraid of the unnatural, especially when you get to the biological conservatives. Anything that is unnatural is scary to them because they're biocons. I don't know if that's an edgy comment. I don't even know what edgy means anymore.
That's
After living in New York City for
I mean, I think we live in a time. We live in a time where words get co-opted and drafted and cycle through so quickly. It is sometimes a little difficult. So, for example, I'll give you a concrete example here that annoys me. It's a pet peeve. So, there's something called the New Right, which is these young writers. The issue is like the New Right is a term that existed in the 1970s. As
right.
this is actually the new right. They're actually, it's like it's kind of, there was Backstreet, and then there was like One Direction or something. It's like
there was the other early punk bands like 45 Grave and the Subhumans and the Exploited, and then there was the Sex Pistols, and then there was Green Day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, being older and like seeing the culture evolve and transform, I do think, one thing I've observed, which is true, is everything new is old. That's not 100% true, obviously. We didn't have ChatGPT 20 years ago, but a lot of cultural movements just reinvent what existed 25 years ago, because the people that are at the heart of the movement are too young to remember the earlier time. And so they feel really fresh and innovative, whereas the old people are like, oh, okay, it's a little, you put the paint on, but like underneath it, it's the same.
I mean, the new people never remember the old people except for the ones that got really famous. It's so funny because I remember chatting with Nick Land on Twitter in about 2013. We were kind of like sparring partners. And now I'm in a Telegram group of Zoomers that are just huge Nick Land fans. And at first they were suspicious of me simply because I'm a woman. They thought that I was like a vet or a journalist. And then I was like, I'm just happy to see that you guys know who Nick Land is.
Yeah, so actually, a lot of my listeners will not know who Nick Land is.
Okay.
And his importance, because he's kind of a seminal figure, although he's more obscure than a lot of the people that kind of build off him.
Okay, I'm actually not familiar with your demographic, to be honest. So if I say anything that is unfamiliar, I'm happy to explain.
Yeah, sure.
So, Nick Land is an accelerationist philosopher who used to be of the Marxist type, and he later became a seminal figure in neo-reactionary circles, which I guess was part of the proto-new right. Nick Land was very influential at the same time that Curtis Yarvin was very influential. People were just starting to discover unqualified reservations. Nick Land had a blog called Xenosystems. He was writing about accelerationist philosophy, often from the point of view of the AI itself. If you can imagine for a second, you're picturing yourself as the artificial intelligence and you're wondering what you're going to do with humanity. So Nick Land was a very experimental philosopher, and he came onto the proto-New Right, also known as neo-reaction, during the same time as people like me and Curtis Yarvin, the Palladium guys. We were all just kind of sick of the liberal hegemony at the time, because after we'd been going to Ephemeral for a while and other assorted events, all of these journalists from publications like Vice and BuzzFeed, they started to just cancel people with this whole like irony bro kind of attitude. It was like a bunch of millennials who were very focused on speaking ironically, which I personally objected to because I'm a millennial myself. And I was like, why can't you just be serious? But they were ironic and they were mean. I remember the first cancellation being Pax Dickinson, who was the CTO of Business Insider. And I remember he was fired from Business Insider for making some edgy tweets, which, the Overton window has shifted so much that they would mean nothing today. But he was fired from Business Insider. This was around the same time as Brendan Eich was canned from Mozilla, just because of something that he voted for like 20 years ago. This was when the cancellations began. John Derbyshire was fired from the National Review. There were, a bunch of cancellations at once. So people like me, we were not into that. It seemed absurd that people would lose their jobs just for something that they would say online. So I started an alternative, dissident counter-narrative publication called Trigger Warning in 2014. We were, I don't want to say funded by Teal Capital, because I'm not sure if that's the proper term, but we were assisted by Teal Capital right before Trump's election. And that was when the new right started to gain power. I'm not sure if it was real power, though, because a lot of it became an echo chamber. There was a lot of purity spiraling, and very few people really had a lasting impact, with the exception of people like Nick Land and Curtis Yarvin. Unless you want to count people, I guess, that were more like in the YouTube corner of things. I don't know if you want to count people like like Shoe on Head or Tim Pool. I don't know if you want to count the IDW.
Well, they're not. Yeah, I don't know if they would be art either, right? Like Tim Pool is like he's like a I don't know, he's like a younger millennial Rush Limbaugh type at this point, right?
Right. So I don't even know if they would count. I'm certainly not in my book. So I wrote a book called The New Art Right, which was basically this idea to have creative thinkers who were outside of the narrative get together and start forming our own institutions. It was about art. It was about music, film, photography, literature. It was about wanting to create a parallel vertical industry of creatives that were outside of the mainstream, that were pushing boundaries, that were transgressive, that were challenging liberal social norms. And I'm not even sure if it would be considered traditionally right-wing, because it was more about like just this bold vitalist push for creativity. Bronze Age pervert was another name that stuck around for a while. He was also a vitalist. A lot of people know about him. But I think of all these old names from back during the time that people have completely forgotten about. And I think it's really sad that the new right now we're on like the fifth iteration of right. Maybe the 25th, if you want to go back to the founding of our country, that they have no idea who all these early thinkers are at all. That upsets me. Yeah. Like a lot of people in the music scene, they have no idea about bands like the Subhumans and the Exploited or 45 Grave. They only know about the Sex Pistols.
Yeah, I mean, this has been I think this has been a problem that's been around for a long time. But I do think it probably has gotten worse. And again, this might be that I'm old, but you mentioned YouTube.
Yeah.
When it comes to attention spans and permanence, I think that's more difficult with something like YouTube. Like the stream comes, the stream goes. Yeah, the YouTube's there, but a lot of times people delete their channels, and so it's kind of like this froth that just comes and goes. Whereas, even during the CD era, you had a CD, the CD would be there long after if the band broke up.
The impermanence that we have now, it's sort of like Andy Warhol's 15 minutes of fame, except that it's like 1 minute of exposure.
Yeah, that's exactly how it is. So, I mean, you're, obviously, kind of a cultural entrepreneur, cultural futurist, these sorts of things. Like, what kind of art, like, are you promoting? Because there's obviously art that's very traditional type of art, like a painting. And then there's like a different type of art, like people are using AI, or maybe like 3D, or I don't know, like maybe there's some art related to video games. Like there's all sorts of media out there that have proliferated over the last 20 years. And I'm not like I'm like a very cutting edge person when it comes to this sort of artistic stuff. So you're both. So I mean, you're obviously like pushing the frontiers, like that's your goal, but you're against the mainstream narrative. What is the mainstream narrative? I mean, I just know that artists are liberal or like lefty, but like the stuff that they say is like pretty bog standard, like, cut and pasted from some academic syllabus of like, DEI or something like that.
I would push back against that because a lot of artists aren't liberal. You have artists like Martina Markota that were around during the Trump administration. They had projects like Lady Alchemy. She got canceled just for voting for Trump. That was all she did. And she had a bunch of people come after her for that. She was a right-wing artist. There were a lot of people like her. They just weren't famous. They just weren't known. And what I began doing was finding people like this and organizing them for my events and my salons. And I'm currently in the process of opening up a right-wing gallery in New York City. I've commissioned some of the best underground artists that are in the dissident sphere. They're transgressive, they're pushing the limits. Some are painters, some make sculptures, some make art with AI. Some, they're just doing multimedia exhibits. I think of Deep Snake's AI. They're currently doing a mix of sound collages and AI art and video installations. So I think that multimedia is the next frontier, using different mediums to create different types of art. So no, artists aren't liberals. It's just that the artists that get the most exposure are liberals right now because culture hasn't caught up to the talent.
Well, I mean, what does that mean? Culture hasn't caught up. Like they're big institutions, and they make the choices of who gets known.
What
right?
I mean is the culture of the institutions have not caught up to the artists on the vanguard that are pushing the boundaries. They don't even know that these artists exist, and they might never know about it. They aren't interested in what's really going on in the frontier or the cutting edge. They just want to do what's safe. They want to do what's sanitized. And ironically, this used to be something that people on the right were enforcing, was safe and sanitized. But now that's what people on the left are enforcing, safe and sanitized. People on the left are cowards. They're afraid, which actually makes them conservative if you want to be technical in your terminology.
Yeah, it's kind of yeah. Yeah, I know what you're saying because they are risk averse conservative personalities that don't want to do something that might offend someone somewhere out there.
Yeah, they're definitely not willing to push any limits. They see all art as something that has to be symmetrical. Also, they can't even comprehend the idea of asymmetrical art. To them, that's like degenerate. And I'm not sure that they're really the.
Well, can you talk about what you mean by symmetry and asymmetry in relation to art?
So people that are conservative are not people that are on the right. At this point, this is why we're using terms like right-wing progressive. It's because conservatives are now on the left because they're afraid of pushing boundaries. And they want everything to be symmetrical. They want everything to be monolithic. They want everything to be the same, which is what liberals want now. Liberals want everything to be the same. So it becomes a question of, have conservatives become the left? Have progressives become the right? We're in a period of realignment.
Yeah. Yeah. And like normally we think about that in political terms, or like political as in like voting and governmental institutions. And you're talking about it in terms of culture. And you live in New York City, which is at the forefront. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons you live in New York City. Forefront when it comes to artistic culture and production in this country. Do you feel that being there, and I've spoken at Times Square. I go to New York every now and then, so I kind of have a little bit of a temperature of it. But you're obviously much closer. Do you think being in New York City, you are seeing a different future from what the mainstream institutions are promoting right now? Because often, people in the avant-garde see what the next generation's just like dominant mainstream is gonna be.
Yeah, people are definitely ahead of the curve here. It's a bit insular, Times Square. Like if you're not inside of it, it kind of seems ridiculous to you, a bit of a spectacle. But what it actually is just people that are on the cutting edge of culture that are sick of being told what they can and cannot say, who they're allowed to talk to. People are getting policed simply because of who their friends are, which is absurd. I mean, I just defended Nina Power on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm alt culture. I defended her, and hundreds of Antifas started harassing me simply for
Well,
defending her.
yeah,
That's
give the
what I do.
context. Give the context of who Nina Power is and what just happened, just so.
So Nina Power, she is a feminist philosopher who is a bit heterodox in her thinking. Definitely not a Nazi. But she was accused of being a Nazi because of some silly, edgy messages that she sent in a group chat. And so all I did was defend her. That was it. I'm like, Nina Power is not a Nazi. She's a cool person. And I got hundreds of people harassing me just for defending her. And so the people in Times Square, they experienced something similar. There was an artist, I think her name was Diana Heaves, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. And they defended her because they were her friend. They were accusing her of being some kind of like alt-right fascist just for voting for Trump, similar to what happened to Martina Mercado. So everybody that was friends with Diana, they started getting harassed just for defending her. And so when you defend your friend and you get harassed simply for defending your friend, well, the left isn't going to welcome you. You're not going to feel welcome in the left. So you're going to get a bunch of people talking about how they left the left. Now, hundreds of people are writing articles and making YouTube videos about how they left the left, which created the opportunity for something like Times Square to exist, which was a bunch of transgressive thinkers and artists that wanted to go outside of traditional social norms. I personally don't think that there's enough art out there. There are great artists. But I think that Times Square actually leaves something to be desired, which is why I'm working on a gallery out there. We need more actual artists. We need more real performers. We need musicians. There aren't really any musicians in the Times Square scene. A lot of it is honestly just clout chasing on Twitter. It's sort of like, look at me, I'm an e-girl. I'm so retarded. There's a girl on Twitter with a name. Her name is Retarded Horror. She's got like hundreds and thousands of followers. This to me is over the top. So I think the Times Square is in its infinite state. I think that old heads like me we're growing it into something more stimulating. We're at the beginning of it. If you think of like, do you know Andy Warhol?
Yeah.
So when Andy Warhol just started the factory, and there were just like a few people coming to the factory to hang out. I think that's where Dime Square is right now, at the beginning of Andy Warhol's factory, the first couple of years of it. We
Okay.
haven't
Okay.
got into an expansion of the factory yet.
Yeah. So what do you think is going to allow it? I'm just curious, like, how does this transition, where, these transgressive what is now the counterculture becomes the culture? How does that happen? Is it just that people retire from nonprofits that are granting agencies or art gallery directors? Like, how does that happen?
Well, I think a lot of people that are involved in the luxury art scene in New York City are ball stick of the liberal narrative. They just don't feel like they can say anything about it because they don't want to lose their shareholders. But now that the Overton window is being pushed further to the right, that is changing. So we're in a period of a lot of social disarray, which is creating new opportunities for new founders to start new institutions. And that's going to cause the luxury art world to stop towing the liberal line. They no longer need to, because they're not going to be as worried about losing their stakeholders, because nobody believes in these liberal myths anyway. They're all just pretending to, because that's the safe thing to do, and they want to protect their businesses. But
So what is a luxury art?
the luxury art scene would be the art galleries in Chelsea. It's not the same as what's going on the Lower East Side. These are traditional art collectors who have avant-garde art at their galleries. And these aren't people that are really plugged into the online world that you and I are plugged into. They're plugged into the traditional art world. And what you're starting to see at these galleries, despite all of the, I guess you could call it like monolithic liberal art, you're starting to see some paintings that are obviously challenging that narrative. A lot of it is very subtle, very Straussian, very discreet. But I mean, you can go to Chelsea and you can look at these luxury art galleries and you can see paintings there that are obviously, trying to come out of the cupboard. And you can tell by what the artists are doing that they're sick of the liberal narrative. It's happening right now. We're just seeing the very beginning of it. So New York City is in the process of a massive change right now. Even in the underground music scene, I'm sorry if I'm rambling. I have Vitalism. So let me know if you want me to pause.
No, it's all good. No, wait, go ahead.
Be offended. You don't need to coddle me because I'm a woman. So in the underground music scene, goth, industrial, experimental noise, neofolk, punk rock, people have personally come up to me at shows and said, I want you to know that I secretly agree with everything that you say on the internet. So even in these underground, purely counterculture, left-wing scenes, people are sick of the mainstream political narrative. They just don't want to say anything about it. But it's this surface pressure that has been building.
So I have a question, actually. So you were talking about stuff online that you're known for, and we talked about neo-reaction and the alternative right, the alt-right, all of these other groups in the teens, and the various like right-wing cultures. And you've engaged with some of these people now and then, and that's caused you problems in terms of probably cancellations and other things. But there's also this other aspect where Spencer Clavin in the American Mind had a really long piece recently about how conservatives can't produce art, which is, I think, a separate issue than what you're talking about, because the right is different than conservatives in some ways. But what has been your experience, though, with these right-wing people and right-wing movements and their relation to art? I know, for example, you were talking about Curtis Jarvin. I know Curtis, you probably know Curtis. I know Curtis pretty well. He's like huge about poetry. We had a podcast actually last year where he talked about poetry. And so, there is an aesthetic sensibility in some of these movements, but others, they're out of tech. And like some of the people in tech can be a little bit Philistine. And then you have very, very, very young guys, sometimes 17, 18, and like they're their main thing is like they play video games or something, like they have like no understanding of what art even is. So how do you deal with it? Like, I mean, what reaction have you got?
Well, I was at a Curtis Yarvin poetry reading the night before New Year's Eve. It was attended well. There were a lot of internet celebrity types there. There were just a lot of traditional right-wingers, and then there were more creative people who genuinely enjoyed the poetry. And there were other poets there. It wasn't just Curtis. So there was a lineup of poets. There was music there. It was definitely the beginning of something great. But as I said, we're talking about like the first couple of years of Andy Warhol's Factory. We're seeing the very beginning of it. There weren't a lot of artists there, but I'm thinking all these artists that are sick of the narrative, well, where are they going to go? So I figured, what am I going to do? I'm going to open up a gallery where I can display their art. I can have it on commission. People can buy it. I'm going to get people from the underground music scenes and bring them into the fold. I talked to Curtis about this. I think that we're building parallel institutions right now in the art and culture industries. I see it happening, and I think it's a beautiful thing. But a lot of people, conservatives, can't make art. We can go back to that article. They just don't understand asymmetry. They don't understand eclectic and eccentric types of expression. They see that as a type of liberal degeneracy. They don't understand how you can be weird and avant-garde without being some type of communist. They are Philistines. And I'm not sure that they're the type of people that we should be reaching out to, especially if they're, being mean to me on the internet for having tattoos or not having children. Do I want people who are mean to me online for not having children and having tattoos to come to my art gallery? No, they're not my demographic. Those aren't the people that I'm looking for. I don't like the term progressive because I think progressives are too slow. I'm a futurist. I think that we need to accelerate things and make them go faster. I like what the effective accelerationists are doing because they're focused on that futurist mindset, this vitalism, dynamism, animism, that kind of bringing culture to life is so much more significant to me than progressive or conservative. Progressives are too slow. Conservatives are way too slow and way too boring. We need something much faster that has much more of a bold energy to it. I recently wrote an article on Substack. You can check it out. Culturalfuturist.net. It's called The Bold and the Brave. It's about how we need people who are bolder and more honest and more confrontational to lead this new bourgeoisie, to create these new institutions and become high status for telling the truth and for being bold. Traditionally, people who have told the truth, who have been bold, who have been honest, have been kicked out of institutions just for being too honest. You can see all these cancellations of the past. What was their sin? They told the truth. What did they do wrong? They told the truth.
Yeah. So, talking about cutting edge or futuristic, I have a question for you in terms of generative AI and like all these new technologies. So I know like I know Grimes has been Grimes AI. There's been like AI creations of Grimes related music, and there's Suno. There's also like Midjourney, all these other things, the visual and the audio, and there is some work. Apparently, there's like some people who are doing certain types of work that are basically being put out of business, and I can imagine jingles or something for Suno. But what a lot of people say, and this is my personal experience, is they're just not there to totally replace human artists, but are people in the art scene starting to use generative AI seriously, or are they rejecting it?
Yes. Sorry, I had to do that. So yes, a lot of people are just like anti-AI because they think that it's going to run artists and musicians out. But a lot of artists are using AI for their art. AI is just another tool. It's not about putting a prompt into Midjourney. It can be taking a photograph and putting that photograph into OpenAI and giving it very specific prompts to change the orientation of the photograph, and then editing that AI enhanced image through your own tools that you have, everything from maps to Adobe software. I don't want to get too technical, but it's not just about prompting. It's about using AI as a tool to make art. I would say the same thing for music also. I've been having fun making songs on Suno. I'm actually an industrial musician. I have a music project called Experiment Haywire. So I've been making, I guess, that real human music for a while. But I just started using Suno, and it was actually a lot of fun. I've been posting my Suno tracks to Twitter. I think Suno is great. I'm excited about the future of AI in music. I think AI concerts are going to happen. So I think we're going to see a bunch of multimedia exhibits with AI. I fully support it. A lot of people in the art and music scenes don't. But there are always, we were talking about this before, there are always going to be people that are against new technology.
Well, I mean, do you think there'd be a difference between the Bay Area and New York? I mean, I don't know if you have a sense of what's going on in San Francisco.
I mean, my honest impression of San Francisco is that there were only a few people that are doing incredible things out there. I think of like Simone Syed, Deep Tech Week, everybody who is involved in American dynamism, people like Jeff Bezos. I think that's his account name on Twitter. People like him, that are actually working on building AGI. I think that they're on the vanguard of the Bay Area movement. Claire Grimes, what she's doing when she's DJing at these effective accelerationist parties, even though she is an AI safetyist, she's still DJing at these Bay Area parties. And we're starting to see a return to like the really cool Bay Area, like revolutionary tech kind of culture, where, these tech parties are now, they're like raves now. So I think that's cool. But I don't think that's the majority of San Francisco. I think that's just some friends of mine. The majority of San Francisco, they're just, I don't know if this is going to offend you, Razib. Like all they have is Buddhist dinner parties. They're so boring. Their energy is
grinders.
So
They're grinders.
low. Their energy is so low. It's like they've had their entire life force sucked out of them. I don't understand why people would want to hang out with these people. They're like, having lived in the Bay Area myself, I didn't just feel like I was having my views policed, and I was canceled there by people who are now saying the same things that I was saying 10 years ago, just to be clear. It's funny the way that works. But these people, they're not just policing your politics, they're policing your energy. You can't speak above a certain volume. You can't have any level of intensity. They're basically like human zombies. They're in some kind of like Orientalist LARP, to be as dull and conformist as possible. I don't like them. So I just like my friends in the Bay Area. Like I like a few people out there.
Well, New York, I mean, New York seems to have a much more broad-based artistic scene, right?
So much. I mean, I don't want to do like this whole Bay Area versus New York thing, but New York has a much better art and music scene, and a better fashion scene. But there are people in the Bay Area who were trying. I saw a picture, I think it was of you, and I forget everybody's name in the picture. I think it was for a Palladium party.
Palladium party. Yeah.
Everybody looked great in that picture. So I am seeing a resurgence of fashion. I think that it's actually easier for people who are working on fashion and art to make a wave in the Bay Area because there's so little of it.
Yeah. Less competition.
Yeah, I know people that have actually moved from New York to San Francisco because they wanted less competition.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, that's just a. Okay, so I posted a link. I'm gonna hit it. Okay, in the messages. So that is a song about Rachel Haywire. Let's see what Suno did. That's all I said.
Oh, I'm scared.
A song about Rachel Haywire. 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 A song about Rachel Haywire.
The pseudo is was very generic. I was not impressed by it. Like it was better with my friend Nikolai, who's an AI scientist. Yeah, I mean I think that there's so many possibilities there where, how do I say it? There's some grunt work in a lot of music, and the pseudo, this artificial intelligence stuff, it's the best. I think the best path forward seems to be just let it do the grunt work and allow you to be more creative.
I think that's a big benefit of artificial intelligence in general, whether we're talking about music or art or even writing a contract, even writing a boring business letter. I hope this letter finds you well. You might want to edit that a little bit. But we are seeing a lot of the boring groundwork being taken out with AI. We're seeing, I don't want to say a revolution in technology because that's going to sound really cliche, but we're making it easier for ourselves to be able to accomplish tasks that we had to do very boring, rote, routine work before that we no longer have to do. And I think it's great that we don't need to do that boring stuff anymore. But it is a double-edged sword. I'm not purely an AI evangelist. I think that the majority of AI-generated content is horrible. If you're not editing it and polishing it and making it your own and giving it an original spin, I don't think that you should be producing it. AI is merely a tool. It's not something for you to say, hey, write me an article on this, and then for you to post it. No, that's horrible. What you do is you give it an article that you've already written, and you tell it to do something to it. Then you see what it does, and then you go ahead and edit its output. So it's a constant collaboration between you and the AI. You are collaborating with the AI. You're not telling
Yeah.
AI what to do, and then boom, you're collaborating with AI. If all you're doing is telling the AI what to do and then you're like releasing it, I think that you're creating a bunch of slop and that you should stop.
Yeah, I mean, it's iterative, right? It's iterative. Like you engage with the result, with the output, and then you just like loop it around, and you kind of fashion it, you play around with it. Um, you know, yeah, I think it's interesting that you know some people are threatened by this, but I was thinking the other day. I mean, think about appliances. I mean, this is cliche, but it's true. Washing machine, dishwasher, all of these appliances that we have. There was so much time that we, as individuals, or your spouse or someone you hired, had to put in human labor to do all this grunt work in the modern house, and we don't have to do that anymore. I mean, the world before plastic sucked in a lot of ways. World before synthetics sucked in a lot of ways, and we don't have to deal with those. We take things for granted. Well, AI could be like that in some ways, in terms of all of these, like a lot of the grunt work that we just assume that someone has to do. Uh, Maybe AI could actually take care of that, and we can focus on creativity, analysis, actually genuine cognitive work that humans in general can do the best.
That's what I think we should be doing. I think the merit is the key word here, and that we need to bring it back. And using AI, we are able to see who has the most merit with what they produce. Because if something is AI generated, we're going to be able to tell right off the bat, because we know what an AI generated article looks like, and we're not going to like it. So AI is helping us not only to accomplish tasks that were boring, but to see where the real cream of the crop is.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things, like I haven't like fully like boned up on this whole topic, but people have been recently saying part of the issue with generative AI with these large language models is it can only work off the input of what it has, which means it creates kind of a generic vanilla product. Now, that's like bare bones, like sufficient in a lot of ways. So, for example, professors are like, "Oh, this would be a C plus essay," but a C plus essay is not a great essay. It's just like, okay, it's not slop. It's white bread. But to actually
Yeah.
make it good, you have to have humans. So humans, I for a while we're going to be pretty indispensable.
I think so. I do think that there is definitely a cutback in the workforce of people that have experience. But I'm not sure that that's related to AI. That might just be related to the results of the COVID economic shutdowns. So what I'm seeing is like people are only hiring interns and grad students. And a lot of people are blaming this on AI when I actually think it has to do with the economic shutdowns, and people not wanting to pay people living
Yeah.
salary. And maybe there are some people who think, oh, well, AI can do all of the difficult human work when it can't. And the issue is that there are so many incompetent people who think that AI is going to do all of the work that they need, and they're quickly finding out that that isn't the case. So they're being very restrictive. That's why there is a crisis in the job market right now, because they're like, oh, well, AI is going to do everything, and then they're finding out, no, we actually do need humans.
It's like a cliche thing that I've heard recently where companies dump their some sort of outsourced task that they had for contractors, try to replace it with AI, and then they have to go back to the contractors because the AI is just not good enough. Like
It's like
95% of the way, 90% of the way is not going to get you there.
it reminds me of Fiverr, where you hire somebody on Fiverr and then you end up just finishing the project yourself. I think that we're seeing the same thing with AI. I don't want to say AI is the new Fiverr. That would be edgy. I'm not edgy enough to make comments like that for attention. But there is a similarity, from, telling somebody overseas on Fiverr to build a website for you and then having to build it yourself, and telling an AI to build a website for you and then having to build it yourself. It's a constant exchange of feedback.
Yeah. So, I guess what are you anticipating? So, as we're recording this, I would probably give it 80% chance right now, 80% probability that Donald Trump is going to be president next year. So we're going to have another, term of, I think, some sort of cultural conflict like last time. What does that mean for you with your projects, with your art gallery, with the culture war?
At this point, I don't want to say my age, but I just see Donald Trump as another person who, if he wants to come to my gallery, he's welcome to come. If he wants to buy any of my paintings, he's welcome to purchase them. If he wants to commission any of my artists to paint for the White House, he's welcome to do so. I don't really get involved in mainstream politics. I don't see myself as somebody with any skin in that game. I know that I'm never going to work in DC because I am too expressive and weird. So I don't have a stake in that world. Donald Trump is just another guy to me.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's fine. But so you have artists that you're commissioning, you will. Do you think there's okay? So one of the issues that is true in a lot of subcultures in the United States right now is, oh, well, I can't work with this person because then this other person won't want to work with me or will think differently of me and all these other things, these sorts of ostracisms, right? Do you think that we are at a point where that is not going to be a problem? You will be able to get good talent, get good creatives in. There's just like a huge reservoir there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's a good Turing test, actually. If there's anybody who doesn't want to work with somebody because of their political affiliations, then I don't want them attending my establishment, because these are people that are weak-minded and cowardly, and they're never going to be on the vanguard. They're always just going to do what they're told. And I don't like sycophants. I don't want people who just do what they're told. I mean, if, Hannah Arendt, just following orders, that's how the Nazi Party came into power, because people did what they were told. It's the banality of evil. There's no reason to want people who simply do whatever they're told to be involved in the art scene at all. These are people that should be, sweeping our floors. They should be cleaning our houses. I mean, if all they're doing is following orders, they're not going to be innovative. They're not creative. I don't know why they're involved in any creative movement at all, actually. It doesn't really make sense to me. We could speculate about the death of the West or the inversion or, whatever. But it's all been said before. I don't really have anything new to add to that.
All right. Well, Rachel, it was great to have you on. So your Substack's the Cultural Futurist. Also, the new art, right? You also had a book, Acidexia #0.
Yeah. That was an early travel memoir that I wrote over 20 years ago about traveling across the country, hitchhiking and going to all sorts of events. And it's a crazy sex, drugs, and rock and roll story. It's kind of like an on the road for the digital generation. So if you want to find out my early origin story, you can check it out. And definitely check out my Substack. And if you join as a member, you can attend my salons in real life and online, and my book clubs. And yeah, thanks for having me on, Razib. It's been a lot of fun talking to you. And yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting in person sometime.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm in Austin. I'll probably be in New York in September. So I'll look you up. Okay. All right.
Sounds great. Cool.
This podcast for kids